What's up, y'all? Welcome to Recess.
I'm Cash.
I'm Awache.
I'm Micah.
I'm Awate.
I'm Giassi. We're here with Creative Justice and Converge Media. We're going to be talking to you about Seattle artists, youth issues, and many more topics. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Recess Podcast. I'm Micah, and I'm sitting here with Deaunte Damper.
Hi, Micah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Can you first tell us what you do?
What I do many things, but a lot of the work that I've been doing for the past 4 years has been working with Voices of Community Activists and Leaders Washington, also known as Vocal WA. It's a grassroots organization that works with low-income community members that have been impacted by HIV, substance use, mass incarceration, and homelessness. And we work with those community folks with lived experience to help them learn that they also are policy change makers, let them know about some of the policies that are impacting them, and help them be a part of the change. We have different cohort meetings that go throughout throughout the state of Washington. But the main goal is to continue to educate and protect and build our community members that are impacted.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
First question is, how did you kind of start getting into that work and organizing?
I would say when I walked in the doors of the NAACP King County, I was working for an organization called POCAN, the People of Color Against the AIDS Network. And I started to notice as I came in the room with some of my elders that they weren't advocating for all the diasporas of Black and Brown folks, especially LGBTQIA community members and community members that are impacted with by substance abuse. And we weren't really talking about, before the pandemic, about mental health. So I joined the NAACP and started different cohorts and conversations around mental health. We started an organization called SKEW, South King County Wellness Coalition, as well as partnering with the Therapy Fund Foundation, where I'm at now, which is an example of the mental health aspect. But really, in 2020, I started losing friends at a rapid rate to the fentanyl crisis. And I reached out as a volunteer with Vocal Washington to try to figure out what we could do. And we started the Opioid Innovative Recovery Work Group, the first of its kind. That's when we were only dealing with 70 overdoses a year. And we were trying to warn city council and other community leaders like, hey, this is going to impact us soon. We need to mobilize and get together. And we're not just talking about just a small group of folks. It was city council representatives, people with lived experience, folks that are incarcerated, and other community organizers around the county.
Okay. So with your work with the NAACP and your work kind of in general, focusing on like Black people, focusing on LGBTQ people, how do you think those identities impact people, like impact substance use?
Well, I think that when we are talking about marginalized communities such as Black and Brown folks and looking at intersectionality, when we look at queer folks, I can speak from my own lived experience. I can speak from other queer folks in our space, that most of us, a lot of community folks that look like us don't want to have conversations about the fentanyl crisis, are afraid to have conversations about overdose, maybe because of elitism. And also some folks aren't just inclusive to want to grow and learn that we need to actually help community folks. And when we talk about LGBTQ folks, we both know that, like, we are still living in a system that is going through Genesis and Revelation on what it looks like for us to get access. So if we look at it like that, we know that Black folks are being marginalized in community. We darn sure know it's happening in Black trans women in our community. It's happening to Black trans folks in our community. We know that it's not just substance abuse. It is other health disparities that have impacted the queer community, such as HIV. So that's just some.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I wanted to ask, what are some like challenges that you've come across? You talked about dealing with like Black people and their elitism, but in terms of like organizing events and actually being out in community? What do you think are some challenges with that?
You know, honestly, for me, I don't be having no challenges. It's like if you build it, they will come. You know, one of the things that I was just so grateful for was Creative Justice and Lavender Rights Project, and also Cal Anderson Park. Because when I hit y'all up, like, hey, we need to mobilize and do something. We only got a couple of weeks to do it. What do? We got together. If you think of, I encourage everyone, whatever you want to do and organize, it can happen. You just got to be around the right people in the right organizations, such as yours, that's reaching its 10 year in Lavender Rights. When I look at Cal Anderson Park, we know what happened in that very area. And we still have Black and brown folks that are in that area. So it was easy to mobilize because I knew my people. So when you say challenges, I don't see any because I'm with my people.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think that's like a great way to think about it.
Yeah, you got to, because sometimes sometimes you'll overthink, not to say I'm not an overthinker, but sometimes you'll overthink it and then the moment's passed. But you have to be able to, when you're creating a conversation starter as well as a call to action, it is just important just to stay firm on the course and know that you can be able to make it happen. There are so many people sitting on good ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to leave this earth with one idea. All of them will be done.
Okay. Yeah. Last question I had for you is, what is something that you think youth and young adults should take away from this conversation or should know about substance use?
I think that when we talk about substance use in our community or the fentanyl crisis, this is not just something that is new. We know it's community folks are now calling for more access to care, but it is mainly because it's impacting white folks in our community, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about the war on drugs, this has been impacting the Black community for years. So when I would say, like, look up on the history on how it has impacted us through policy, how it is impacting youth now, how other folks in our intersections are in the Black community are being impacted, and also tap in with Vocal Washington, tap in with other organizations like Cherry Hall, like Recovery Cafe, just to name a few.
Okay. Thank you for that advice.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's all I have for you today.
That's it?
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk more. No.
Okay. Thank you. We're actually going to pass it off. We're going to have a break and we're going to pass it off to my co-host, Awate.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of our interview. We're with the amazing Deaunte Damper.
Hey.
And let's get started with the first question. How do you wish addressing substance abuse was brought up?
I think that community, especially like when I'm thinking about youth more so, I think that when we're having conversations about our community folks that are impacted by substance abuse, when we are talking about the history of substance abuse and where we're at now, we have to talk with humility, as opposed to looking, yes, the crisis is bad in our community, but we also have folks that are losing their lives to it. How do you feel invited to have a conversation if you're in fear of people? And also, I think that one of the things that I always suggest for people to do is look at public health. In King County, it has an amazing outreach team, which consists of Thea Oliphant Wells, who has taken a unique stance on outreaching with public health, with vending machines full of Narcan and fentanyl test strips, and literature on how you can be able to save a life. I think it's some of the best ways is get more educated on how you can save a life, because we have to do something. We lost, I think, past like 1,200 people last year, and it could be more. It could be one less if we actually educated ourselves in this space.
What programs do you wish were in place? Housing.
Meeting. I think that there are programs that are in place, but just need more funding. There is a co-lead program. There is the REACH program. I also think, even programs such as Creative Justice, we need youth out there starting the conversation of like, hey, we know what's happening in our community, and we want to be able to navigate. And I've seen some of the fellow comrades out there actually knowing how to use Narcan, and I think that is dope. Mm-hmm. It starts a conversation, and I think that funding more organizations that we do have. Mm-hmm. Most of us don't know that they exist because, well, what do we see on the news, right? Mm-hmm. We see the narrative. Someone slumped up on the corner rather than, hey, let's find this person a program. Let's help them. Let's call REACH. Let's hit up the CARES team. Let's hit up Lavender Rights. Just as examples, but more funding.
Mm-hmm. I feel like not only like just more funding, but just like also just putting it out there more, because it's just like we have like so many programs like Creative Justice, but it's like not a lot of people know about it. Mm-hmm. And it's like if they have to find out, it's usually like Creative Justice has like a lot of events, but I wish that there was like, I don't know, the news outlets or I don't know. I just wish there was more like a way to get us more out there, so kids can see like, oh, there's a good program for you guys. We everyone to just like come down. Or,
And a lot of our community folks that are impacted by this crisis or impacted or are in addiction or living in addiction are in isolation, right? And how do we come out of isolation? And I mean, I didn't disclose this earlier, but I'm also a person in recovery. And it took me a while to get out of that isolation. And it wasn't just like going into treatment. It was really discovering that I'm in a safe, we all are looking for a safe, one of my friends said, we all are looking for a safe place to land. And I found a safe place to land with my community folks that were able to learn more about what was going on with me in ways to support me. And I was in the midst of doing some great things in community work, but I think, my recovery is not me being clean of substances. Mm-hmm. It is sitting across and talking about how we can work together with you. It is talking to our director or calling my grandma, So, sorry to get emotional, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. What's your overall goal for your mission?
The goal for my mission? Mm-hmm. I think a wise man by the name of Big Sean said, I'm going to live every day like it's my last. I want to show up for everyone in my community that is impacted by anything. When I look at my community, I see so much joy, and I also see a lot of hurt. And I think that my mission every day is to try to put some joy in somebody's life. Sometimes some people don't have that mission because they're angry or whatever, but that's them. My mission is to put a smile and bring some joy into my community's life.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Well, that's all the questions I have.
That's it.
Okay, my last question.
Okay.
What practices do you wish were in place to prevent substance abuse?
When we're thinking about that, right? I mean, no criminalization. Forced treatment is not the only way to go. Mm-hmm. And there are very many resources and accesses to care further north of King County, but not south. And we are losing more people further in South King County. And that is all diasporas of folks, but mainly Black and brown folks. So when I think about actionary things like put some resources out there, fund more organizations like Utopia or POCAN that have already been doing this lifelong work. So I think that's what I have.
Would you like to tell us more about the event that happened?
The event that we was at? Yeah. The event that was popping? For the past 4 years with working, 3.5 years working there, but 4 years, Local Washington always partners with other organizations to come together to remember community members that we have lost through overdose. Last year was one of my favorite events. where we were on 12th and Weller on Jackson Street, well, near Jackson Street. And we gathered there, but it was more than just a gathering. Most of those folks just see people walking past them or might give them a pamphlet on some resources, but we were there for a whole day. And we wanted to let community members know that we remembered them, but also wanted them to take the time to acknowledge that we know that you're losing people out here. And the organizations such as Creative Justice, Lavender Rights Project, even Cal Anderson Park, all in Public Health Seattle King County, all rallied together and said, hey, we are losing people as well. We have some resources for you. And above all else, we also have a mural. The mural means a lot because it was made by a very good friend, T-Dub. She made one last year, and this year's one was no different. It was huge. We probably have about 100 names on there that we'll be putting in the Tarina James Center, which is a center for our impacted folks. And it's just something about when I'm in Cal Anderson Park where I always just get chills because I think about community folks that I have lost, not just through overdose, through gun violence, through homophobia, through the HIV pandemic that is still plaguing our community. But it felt great to be in that space and, as I said before, see the joy on our community folks' face. For that day, they remembered their friend, and although it was painful, it was still also a joyous occasion because they also got resources that they needed to.
Is there any way to get in contact with Vocal Washington?
Absolutely. As a community organizer for Vocal Washington, you can email me, Deaunte Damper, at Deaunte, DEAUNTE, Damper, DAMPER, at vocal-wa.org.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And that's all the questions we have right now. Thank you, Deaunte Damper, for coming down. Just so you know, Deaunte is an amazing person, and I hope you guys get to know him more. And that's all we have for today. Wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Have an amazing time. I'm Awate, and I'm going to be closing this interview. Have a good time. Bye.